When you ask someone why they love Quentin Tarantino, they'll usually say it's because of his soundtracks, or his set pieces, or his comedy.
We got into this thing with the best intentions, really. I never... Oh, I'm sorry. Did I break your concentration?
And a few people even say that his dialogue is pretty good too.
Wait a minute! I didn't say no bags.
But nobody can see.
So?
So it'd be nice to see.
God damn it!
But that's not the reason he's great. For example, I'm going to take a scene from Pulp Fiction, tear it up a bit in the edit room, and then we'll talk about why it's not as good as the original. Ready? Go.
You okay? Nah, man. I'm pretty fucking far from okay.
What now?
What now? Let me tell you what now.
Now, let's take a look at the real thing.
You okay?
Nah, man. I'm pretty fucking far from okay.
What now?
What now?
First, notice that I'm using basic close-ups now instead of the medium two-shot Tarantino originally used. The scene no longer flows as naturally as it did in the movie because of this. It has the same dialogue, same characters, same setting, only this is how a lazy filmmaker would shoot it. Constant cuts, everyone gets a close-up, and a coffee break behind the scenes in between the shot changes. Tarantino, however, provides us with a medium two-shot, showing us a relationship between two characters, one in the forefront of the action and one in the back. That way, our eyes are always entertained, looking for something new in the frame. Usually, they'll jump from Butch to Marcellus to Butch again and end on Marcellus. He only cuts to show us Zed, who is hilariously writhing in pain. If Tarantino had used close-ups, our eyes would be fixed on just the one person who's speaking, making the shot and scene boring and unnecessary to view more than once. This is what filmmakers call staging, blocking, and coverage. Tarantino is a master when it comes to doing this, as all his movies show.
Mommy, I'm home. Hey, baby.
Here's another example, this time from my favorite Tarantino movie, Inglourious Basterds. Rather than pointing out the whole scene, however, I just want to point out one particular shot, this one.
3 Gläser.
Just this one shot contains so much good in it. First, we get an over-the-shoulder shot from Hickox's back focused on Major Hellstrom, and we get to see three things. Hickox lifting 3 fingers, which is important for later in the film, Hellstrom's initial reaction, and then his decision to hide the fact that he knows Hickox is lying. For first-time viewers, it seems important, but for people who have already seen it, they know that this is when the whole operation turns south, making the scene a whole lot better the second time around. So for those wondering exactly how this is done, it's not that hard. First, decide what type of blocking and staging you want. I usually like to limit this to 3 types. The first one is what I call Modernist Naturalist staging. This is used in an increasing number today, and I'd say it's pretty much mastered by Alejandro G. Iñárritu and Alfonso Cuarón. For example, take a look at this shot from Y Tu Mamá También. There's no fancy camera placement, just 2 sets of characters, each with their own dialogue and story. It feels natural, adding to the realism of it all. The second type is objective storytelling staging. This is used in films like Spotlight, All the President's Men, The Godfather, and practically any Scorsese movie. It's the type of blocking you'd use when you don't want your style to get in the way of the actual film and story. It's very unshowy and allows the viewers to really process the story for what it is rather than admiring the style of the filmmaker. You usually see a lot of reverse shot sequences, steadicam positions, and very still scenes that just allow for the characters and the story to unfold. The third style is what I like to call the Regal Hollywood style, or sometimes even the Shakespearean style of blocking, composition, staging, and coverage. This is the type of stuff you typically see in older movies, like stuff from John Ford and David Lean. Notice how the characters move around, usually in unusual or exaggerated ways. Characters that have something important to say or are being hit with important information will be moved closer to the camera so that the audience can have a good relation to them.
Why don't you try my father?
We already have.
Your father is the man who's disappeared.
Here in Lawrence of Arabia, both General Allenby and Lawrence move around as the scene plays out so as to keep the viewer visually interested, and it also correlates to what they're saying. Allenby moves as he is trying to make a point, Lawrence gets up when he agrees with him, and then Lawrence moves left with the camera when he wants to point out something for himself.
The best of them won't come for money. They'll come for me.
The staging is almost like something you'd see in a play, and despite it being unrealistic, it makes for some pretty good visual storytelling. However, directors don't usually just rely on one type of blocking. Tarantino usually mixes the Regal Hollywood style with the objective style in his movies depending on what the scene calls for. If it's mere exposition, he might try to make something more cinematic by moving the characters around. But if they're just having a conversation with that classic Tarantino dialogue, he might just use shot reverse shot, an item of the objective style. This is why so many people love him. Despite being a dialogue-heavy filmmaker, Tarantino always spends a certain amount of time figuring out how to visually tell a dialogue-based story. In turn, we get dinner conversations turn into incredible scenes of villainy, mind-blowingly funny violence, and most recently, cringe at unsuspecting victims. This is why Quentin Tarantino comes off as one of the best directors today. He takes the modernized filmmaking style of heavy dialogue, mixes it in with staging, and creates movies that are just great. So next time you're working at a scene, don't just make sure the lighting's good and read the actors their lines, experiment with what you can do in a scene. Make the audience laugh at something vile, hold their breath at something tense, and above all, enjoy the damn movie.
You know something, you bitch? I think this just might be my masterpiece.